Atana? Kentrell bit back the rest of what he's gonna say. This could not be Atana. Not this horrifying marionette. Her head still tipped completely to one side. She gave him a macabre smile. My darling Kentrell. Juris Khan put his arm around her, with an expression akin to on the face of any loving father. He said to her, Now, my dear, you should be going to your beloved, looking your best. Don't you think so? He gently put the arms in place, then ran his hand over the main limb. As Lord Khan's fingers pulled away, Kentrell saw that Atana's own hand had been restored. Muttering the words of which the mercenary had never heard, the Road Monarch took a step back. A fiery corona surrounded his daughter from head to toe. Atana rose several inches into the air, and as she did, her legs twisted, reshaped, becoming once more normal limbs. The gouges in her face and form quickly dwindled, finally disappearing. Even her dress restored itself, all signs of damage vanishing. Obiastus, called out Juris Khan. Slowly, Atana descended to the floor again. The shimmering corona faded away. Before Kentrell stood an almost completely restored woman. Almost, because her head yet hung to the side. With a gentle smile, Atana's father put her head back in place. Muscles, veins, tendons, and flesh instantly fused. The terrible wound sealed itself, all trace soon gone. Juris Khan briefly adjusted her hair. There! So much better! Am I pretty again, Kentrell? She innocently asked. He could say nothing. He could think of nothing. In desperation, he looked at Quoth Sin, who seemed to be taking everything in with an eagerness that did not bode well at all. It is as you said, the diminutive Vajera almost cooed to their host. The power to do almost anything, even to preserve life itself. A gift of heaven, their host returned. A gift that can be shared. Heaven? Blurted the captain. This is hellish. Khan gave him a paternal look. Hell? This is Yurei, my good captain. No beast or servant of the Prime Three can touch this holy kingdom. Is that not so, Master Sin? The Vizier sniffed. Don't be so mundane, Dumont. Can't you even imagine the power of heaven? Do you think hell could preserve life so? Preserve it? You call that a life? She's dead, Sin. Just look at her. My Kentrell, how could you possibly say that? Pouting, Atana stepped close, her eyes glittering in that magical way they always had, and he could feel the warmth of her body, even though she still stood a few scant inches away. Each breath rose and sank in fascinating display, enough so that Captain Dumont had to question his own fears. Do I truly look dead to you? Open your eyes and mine, Captain, quoth Sin urged, coming toward the pair. You've always struck me as a little brighter than most of your earthly kind. You know the stories, the legends of the light among lights. You know how the archangels granted great miracles to the people revealed to them, and things we can only just imagine. But this? Kentrell is correct to be skeptical, commented Juris Khan. He extended his hands to take in the entire chamber. Do not the archangels tell us to be wary of evil in the guise of goodness? Does not the world have tales about cunning demons seeking to corrupt humans at every turn? My good captain, the history of Yurei at the time when we sought the pathway to heaven's sanctuary very much backs to your suspicious nature. It is because of the subtle guile of Diablo and the many lesser demons that I prayed for a miracle, for a way to secure my kingdom completely from their evil. To my good fortune, the Archangel did grant me that miracle, but In the meantime, we had more than once had to deal with cunning traitors, and plots sinister barely recognizable as such. Yes, I applaud your skepticism, however misplaced as it might be at this moment. Sin turned the veteran soldier so that the platform filled Kentrel's gaze. The mercenary's eyes widened as he noted the glowing, pulsating runes. The urge to get as far away from the artifact as he could filled Kentrel. Unfortunately, not did the Viserai hold his arm, but Atana stood right behind him. The Archangel, who had spoken to Lord Khan, could not undo what had been done, the sorcerer explained. But he revealed to our host a possible escape should the proper elements come into play. And they have. Now Khan stepped around the platform, eyeing Kentrel from the opposing side. I had originally thought to make use of your fortuitous arrival to fulfill my original intention, to see Yuri at last rise to heaven. However, your good Master Sin rightfully convinced me of our need to stay on the mortal plane. And, as it turns out, this works out so perfectly with what I've calculated that I cannot but believe that the Archangel truly meant this route instead. For lack of anything better to say, Captain Dumont muttered, I don't understand. It's very simple, Dumont, you cretin. The Archangel pointed out powers not bound by heaven or hell. Powers of nature, of the world itself. What better than these to help bind Yuri to our plane again? The natural tendencies of such forces are to create a balance, to set everything into harmony. Yuri will truly become real again, its people once able to go out into the sun, once able to go out and react with other kingdoms, other realms. At the moment, Kentrel did not see that as a quite wondrous notion as Sin clearly did. In fact, he regretted even having set the one stone in place. Yuri had not proven what he had expected, and his future not what he had thought it to be. What about Gregis Matzi? The captain demanded, shaking off both Atana and the Viserai. He could not forget the horrible sight he had seen. Lord Khan, explain that simple matter to me, Dumont. You find Gregis Matzi? No, but one of his acolytes. He tried also to destroy the Key of Shadow, but had a protective spell cursed him so. The Cretan brought him on himself. He now guards against others with equally vile notions, protecting Yuri's hopes. There were too many holes in the story. Too many gaping holes. But for Quoth Sin, who had not been there, Khan's explanation seemed to make perfect sense. Not so for Kentrel Dumont. However, he knew very well that Juris Khan had added another lie to the many already piled up. Everything that the captain and his companions had assumed about the Holy Kingdom had been wrong. They had come to find a legend and instead had unveiled a nightmare. And what about my men, Sen? What about Albord and the rest? And even the necromancer, Zail? A lot of good men have gone missing, and I've not heard any reasonable explanation for their disappearances. Juris Khan came from around the platform. He seemed even taller, more foreboding than previously. The taint left by Gregis has touched some of my people, I admit. However, once Yuri is settled amongst mankind again, those who have done those terrible deeds shall be taken into account. While a part of him wished desperately to believe the elder man, Kentrel had heard too much and could accept. Sin, you can stay here if you'd like, but I think I'll be going. Atana was suddenly there again at his side. The captain felt certain he torn between desire and revulsion. Here stood the woman of his dreams, the same one who had fallen to her death, then returned in the most grotesque fashion. Oh, but you can't go, Kentrel. Darling, not yet. Spoken with honey, yet not sweet enough, not even made him more wary. Again pulling away from her, the veteran soldier readied his blade. I'm going through that door, Sin. You be smart to go with me. Don't be a bigger fool than I take you for already, Dumont. I'm not going anywhere, and you certainly can't. We need you most of all right now. Need me? For what? The Vajra shook his head at such ignorance. You're critical to the spell, of course, cretin. He looked from face to face and turned to run. Against one spellcaster, Kentrell Dumont might have defended himself. Against two, he might have even entertained some hope of victory. Against three, only a madman stayed and fought. But as Kentrell ran towards the door, he abruptly discovered himself running toward the platform instead. With one fluid movement, the captain spun around, only to see the platform again. Do stop wasting our time with such games, Dumont, snapped Sin. It isn't as if we plan to kill you. Unable to make any progress towards escape, Kentrell paused to listen. No? The amount of blood needed will hardly even make you dizzy. I promise. Blood? Damn you! Still gripping the sword, Kentrell lunged. The sword disappeared from his hand, reappearing but a second later in that of Juris Khan's. With an almost casual air, Atana's father tossed Kentrell's last hope aside. My dear Captain, you continue to misunderstand everything. Yes, we require you to lay down upon the platform, but it's hardly a human sacrifice. Let me explain. An almost saintly look spread across the lined visage. We deal with powers that are in part in some which keeps natural order in balance. In that natural order, life is most paramount, and in life, blood is the strongest representation. To bind the power, then we need blood. The platform acts as a focus, which is why the blood must be drawn there. His soft but cold hand touched his cheek. Jumping, Kentrell once more faced the creature he thought he loved. And they only need a few drops for that. The rest they draw, my love, is for us. The caresses both teased him and made his flesh crawl. Us? Of course, Kentrell, darling. When the entire spell is complete, not only will Yurei once more be in the real world, but you shall never have to fear death again. Isn't that wonderful? Never fear death again. That would make him like her. He tried to flee again, but his body refused to obey his demands. Kentrell could breathe, he could even blink his eyes, but his legs and arms remained frozen. Really, Dumont? The embarrassment you cause us both. You can certainly spare a few drops to save a city, and the offer Lord Khan offers you. If it could be done more than once, I would do it myself. To his minor satisfaction, the mercenary commander discovered his mouth worked. You're welcome to it, Sin. I regrettably must assist in the spell. Besides, our good host assures me that when the conjunction of forces is correct again, he shall grant the favor. For now, you are the fortunate one. Kentrell's legs began to move, but not by his choice. Next to the platform, Quoth Sin made walking motions with his two fingers. As he did, the fighter's legs mimicked the actions. Damn it, Sin. Don't you realize that something's wrong here? As he neared the Vajra, though, the captain noticed a faint, glazed look in the sorcerer's eyes. Up close, Sin had the appearance of a man entranced. Up, please, the Vajra commanded. Unable to resist, Kentrell climbed up the platform, spreading out as if his limbs had been bound by an invisible cuffs. Juris Khan loomed over him. In his hand, the monarch wielded a slim but serpentine dagger. Have no qualms, Kentrell demand. Yurei shall be eternally grateful to you. As he raised the blade above his head and uttered words of power, the captain caught sight of Atana, smiling expectantly at him. Soon they would be together again, and he would be just like her. The winged gargoyle leapt out of the door, its entire body seeming to sprout from the iron itself. The beaked maw opened and roared, and the metallic talons slashed at the pair. To his credit, Gorse placed himself in front of Zail and began trying to slay the creature with his axe. Unfortunately, the axe bounced off the body of the beast with a loud clang, chipping the weapon's head in the process. "What do we do?" asked the giant. The gargoyle stretched a good 8 to 10 feet from end to beak to tip of the hindquarters. Zail knew that even Gorse dared not get too close. The unliving Sentinel would tear him to ribbons. "Let me try a spell." The gargoyle seemed much like a golem, only in animal form. Perhaps the necromancer thought it could be dealt with in much the same manner. He did as he had done before, reversing both words and spell, trying to transmute false life back into an inanimate object. For a moment the monster paused. It shook its head as if trying to clear its thoughts, then continued to advance unchecked. Beaten for the moment, Zail and Gorse withdrew, winding their way back up the steps. The gargoyle continued to follow until it reached the midway between the top and bottom of the stairway. There, it suddenly froze, iron gaze fixed upon the pair above. "So, first and foremost, it protects the door," Zail muttered, wondering what he could do with that bit of information. Gorse leaned on the axe, glaring back at the beast. "We gotta go down there. Kentrel's down there for sure. And I don't like that." The necromancer had to agree with him. For what reason Captain Dumont might be down there, he could not say, but surely it had to involve something dire. The longer the gargoyle kept the two of them at bay, the greater the likelihood that Captain would be murdered. Or even worse. "What goes on out there?" demanded a voice at his belt. In all that had happened, Zail had forgotten about Humbart. Of course, the skull could do little, but unless the necromancer responded, he knew that Humbart would only continue to rant. "We face a gargoyle, blocking the door through which we believe Captain Dumont can be found," he informed the contents of the bag. "Unless you have something to offer, I would suggest you keep still." True to form, the skull paid him no mind. "You try one of your golem spells?" "Yes, and it failed." What about... Zail sighed. Exasperation is usual in his bodiless companion, despite the good Humbart had done for him in the past. "This is hardly the time. Only one question, lad. What about the Iron Maiden?" "Iron Maiden?" grumbled Gorst, likely knowing the term from the torture device. "Another spell involving reversal. Why it should even be brought up by a..." The pale necromancer hesitated. "But it could work. I think it would involve risk, but if I am careful, I should be all right." The giant shook his head. "If it's dangerous, use me." "Gorse." The massive fighter would not hear him. "If it doesn't work with me, you can try something else. If it doesn't work with you, what am I gonna do?" He had a point there, one that Zail disliked immensely. Servants of Rathma saw themselves as the front line in the battle, to keep the mortal world in balance. They did not generally gamble with the lives of others in their place. "Very well, but you do not risk yourself needlessly." "What do I do?" Gorse asked. Already casting the spell, Zail replied, "You must engage the gargoyle in combat." "That all?" From the skull came another response. "You can also try praying a bit, lad." Gorse grunted. Zail finished the spell, explaining, "If it works as planned, whatever blow it strikes against you will damage it instead. If you feel the slightest bit of pain, retreat quickly." The giant said nothing more, not even commenting on the fact that if the gargoyle got one good strike at him, he would not have the chance to retreat. Hefting his weapon, the mercenary descended toward the metallic beast. Nearly within range, Gorse suddenly paused. "What if I strike him? Does it hurt me?" "No. You may attack as will." The massive fighter gave him a happy grin. "Good." Nearly motionless while the two had stood atop the steps, the winged gargoyle suddenly stirred to savage life as the human approached. It snapped and slashed even as Gorse thought the fighter had not yet gotten near enough. Despite his confidence in the spell work, Zael could not help feeling much concern for his companion. One never knew what spells might also surround the beast. He readied himself to protect Gorst at the moment anything turned awry. Barely a yard from the guardian, the giant suddenly raised the axe over his head and let out a war cry. The gargoyle roared in turn, leaping forward. Metal clashed against metal. Despite the spell set upon him by the necromancer, Gorst thought as the spells alone would save him. Twice, 3 times, the head of the axe met the claws and the savage beak of the gargoyle. The razor-sharp nails came within inches of the mercenary, but Gorst avoided them as he would of any attack. With his prodigious strength, he dented the head of the adversary, but the toll of hitting the iron hide of the beast proved too much. The blade chipped and dulled, and each swing came slower and slower. The gargoyle finally got one paw under Gorst's defenses. The fighter tried to retreat, but stumbled over the step behind him. "What's happening?" Humbart called. Zael said nothing, poised to cast a spell even though he knew it would not save the mercenary from terrible injury. The claws tore at Gorst's right leg. A horrible metallic screeching sound rippled through the passage. Gorst's monstrous foe suddenly tumbled to the side, its right leg shredded open. Seemingly unconcerned, the gargoyle pushed forward, trying with its beak to snap at the human's unprotected midsection. Again the metallic shriek echoed throughout the area. Now the gargoyle did back away, although in a rather haphazard fashion. In the area of his belly, a gaping hole now existed. A live animal would have hardly been dead, or dying from such wounds, but the magic animating the winged terror kept it going, albeit without much skill and fluidity of the movement as in the beginning. "It's working!" shouted Gorst. "I'm going in closer!" Even seeing that his spell worked perfectly, Zael did not relax. He also moved nearer to the struggle, watching for any possible threat or an opening of which he could make use. Swinging the axe hard, the giant actually indented the gargoyle's left shoulder. Impeded by such a wound, the beast struck again, reaching for Gorst's right arm. The results were as expected. Instead of mangling soft human flesh and ripping apart muscle and bone, the animated guardian only tore its own right leg asunder. Stunned strictly with 2 badly mauled limbs on the same side, the gargoyle teetered, falling against the wall. Yet, it did not give in. "This is taking too long," bellowed the mercenary. "I'm going to try something." He threw down his axe and leaned forward, presenting his head and throat for the beast. "Gorst, no!" Even though the spell had so far protected the fighter, Zael wanted to take no chances. The metallic guardian, however, reacted too swiftly for the necromancer. With its good front limb, the winged creature slashed hard, aiming for the entire target. Claws that should have ripped away Gorst's face to the very bone came closer and closer. With a savage squeal of reaching iron, the gargoyle's own muzzle and throat were tore off. Little remained of the monstrous visage save a bit of an eye. A ragged hole reminiscent of a damaged golem's greeted the staring eyes. The gargoyle took an awkward step forward, choosing to stand on the ruined front limb. This time it toppled completely to one side and seemed unable to right itself. With an almost childlike interest, Gorst leaned down and bared his chest to one good forelimb. Then he reached out and tapped the ruined guardian on the paw. The paw instinctively attacked. A great gouge appeared in the gargoyle's chest. The metallic beast screeched once, then stilled. "Nice spell," Gorst commented, rising. "How long does it last?" "This battle is done," replied the necromancer. "It is gone now." "Too bad. Can you cast it on me again?" Zael shook his head. "Not with any trust to its success. Besides, I suspect that such a spell will not help you down there." The giant seized his battered axe again, not at all bothered by the other's answers. Guess I'll have to fight like normal, huh? With the gargoyle destroyed, the handle to the door had also been lost. But Zael suspected that it did not serve as the true mechanism for entry. Such a place would not depend upon such a mundane device. The true key to opening the door had to involve magic. But how to discover that key? He pulled the skull free. Humbart, what do you see? A red force blankets the whole thing. There's a dark greenish line zigzagging over it from top to bottom, and in the center I see some kind of blue-yellow spot. That had to be what Zael sought. Guide the tip of the blade to it. The skull did, urging the necromancer's hand left and right, and down, as needed. Right on the mark there, lad. A slight tingle coursed through Zael as he touched the point of his weapon to that spot. Immediately he began a spell of searching and unbinding. Without the unique properties of the skull, Zael knew that he would not have been able to pinpoint the area so precisely. So cleverly had the wards been set in place. His mind untied and unfolded the myriad patterns, creating the lock, slowly teasing out the secret to its opening. Unbidden from his mouth came words even he had never heard before. Old words of dark imagining. The necromancer considered pulling free, but that would have left him with no other options, and Captain Dumont most certainly in some dire strait. Then, at last, a single word came to him, the final key, and, if he had been private to the knowledge of the original caster, the one, only, truly needed. Tazarka, Zael whispered. With a slow moan, the door began to open. The necromancer leapt back, joining a wary Gorst in preparation of the attack surely to come. The iron door opened wider, revealing light from within. A flood of varied and powerful forces emanated from within, enough to awe even Zael. Yet nothing burst forth to attack them. No guards, no golem, nothing. Glancing at each other, Zael and Gorst cautiously entered. The vast angled room immediately snared their attention, for here clearly stood the most private sanctum of a powerful spellcaster. The weighty tomes, the gathered specimens, powders, and artifacts Zael had never even seen before. Such a collection. He stared for a moment, caught up in the sight. Even Gregismati's abode had not touched him so. It took Gorst to break the spell over him. Gorst, who asked the question that had to be asked. Why is it empty?